What's up everyone, Kokomojo here, and today we're going to be doing a viewer key review. This was submitted by our friend Blue in the Discord, and I am going to take a look at their gameplay and see if I can offer any helpful advice. So let's see what our opener looks like here. The few things I'm going to be looking for are how we use our cooldowns, how we're going to be using our defensive abilities, and how we're going to be deploying our crowd control. These are like the few things that rogues are really strong at, and so we want to be figuring out how we're maximizing those strengths. So starting off, we ended up Shuriken Storming and then Black Powder. The Shuriken Storm is great, but right, we're able to get max combo points immediately, but at this point we're getting into our AoE rotation. We haven't pressed flag yet. So what I would do here is pick either the Vanguard or the Corpse Harvester and put flag on one of them, and then get into your AoE rotation. Flag is a really short cooldown with the Covenant Legendary, so we want to be casting that as often as possible. It ends up being a huge verse buff. I think when we can max it out, it's a 30%, rather with the 30 stacks, it ends up being a 15% burst buff. And we also get a bunch of haste, so it's definitely worth casting that as often as possible. We are also targeting one of these soldiers, but the priority target here is going to be the Corpse Harvester or the Vanguard. So looks like we're trying to get this hammer, and we use Vanish. That's fine. One thing you can do there is actually just sap that Harvester, and then you don't have to worry about spending Vanish on that. Cool. So there's two Harvesters in this pull. One thing I like to do is call out to my team that I will just own one of the Harvesters. I can do all of the stops on one of the Harvesters. You can basically kick one cast, then kidney shot another cast, and then by the time we get a third cast, we'll have kick back up. And then you can also, because it's AoE, you'll have almost 100% Shadow Dance uptime, and you can use your cheap shot as well to delay a cast. But here I don't know if we ended up kicking anything. Maybe we overlapped on a kick, and had a kind of unlucky overlap on kicks. Okay, looks like our hunter soothed the Vanguard. This is also something you want to look out for as well, is trying to soothe that Vanguard. I'll usually, in my group, I'm the only soothe, so I will usually wait until the Vanguard gets to around 10 or 12 stacks. Or if the tank is just taking extra damage and needs a little bit of relief, then I'll soothe at that point. So looks like we are just fighting these guys while we wait for the Goliath to get repaired. This is fine. One thing I would be doing here is getting a full, like a max duration slice and dice going, because we know we're going to be pulling the boss here really soon. Like right now we've got the Kyrian orbs coming up, so you get your orb, and at this point we don't have slice and dice up, so yeah, look to take advantage of these pulls before the boss to get the max duration slice and dice going. This right here is also our first flag of the dungeon on this boss. We are about 3 minutes in, and this could have been your third flag of the dungeon, so definitely try to prioritize getting flag up as often as possible. So let's see here, we have symbols and okay, so now we've been targeted twice by the puke, and both times we ended up just tanking it. We had no cooldowns there to dodge that second time, but I think the first time we may have been able to use evasion. So the puke is both physical and magic, so you can use either cloak or evasion to avoid the damage. And in a higher key, it's definitely worth doing that. It ends up being a lot of damage that your healer just has to deal with. So here it looks like we maybe casted, let's see, looks like we casted Symbols of Death, but didn't have Shadow Dance available. So this tells me that we're slightly mismanaging our Shadow Dance charges. Let's see, when did we use Shadow Dance? Right here. Okay, so we had Shadow Dance. We just got a charge of Shadow Dance, and we have 15 seconds until Symbols and 11 seconds until Flag. What I would be doing is just sitting on this Shadow Dance charge, because you're not at risk of capping charges, and in 15 seconds you'll be able to line up Flag, Symbols, and Shadow Dance. So what I would be doing is getting my Rupture back up on Blightbone. I would be refreshing the Slice and Dice. When Flag is off cooldown, you will want to get to max combo points, or at least 5 combo points, and then you can Flag and Shadow Dance. Even if Symbols isn't quite ready yet, that's okay. You'll build up some stacks of Flag, and then press Symbols as soon as it's ready. And at that point, you will probably have done enough finishers to reset one of your Shadow Dance stacks, or charges rather, and you'll be able to do back-to-back Shadow Dances with Flag. The rotation here ends up being you'll do Flag, Symbols, and 2 Shadow Dances, and then you'll be able to do just 1 Shadow Dance with Symbols the next time around, and you won't have Flag back unless you're in AoE. Usually in single target, you'll get your Flag cooldown down to about 1 minute, maybe 55 seconds or so. And then in AoE, you can pretty reliably get it down to around 30 or 40 seconds. So in AoE, you can line up pretty much every Symbols and Flag. And then in single target, every other Symbols will line up with Flag. So, and you really want to make sure that for every Symbols of Death cast, you have at least 1 Shadow Dance. If you just cast 1 Shadow Dance with every Symbols, then that's great. That's a good rule to follow. And then just be casting Shadow Dance without Symbols if you're going to cap charges. You want to never cap charges. Pretty much any combo points that we're spending are going to be resetting the cooldown. So we want to make sure that we're always cooling down at least 1 charge. Alright, so we have another double Harvester pack. This is where I would be setting one of them on focus and then planning to fully own all of the stops on one of these Harvesters. So we get a little unlucky, we get quaked and then take some damage from the Relic and then have flesh thrown at us. These guys on Fortified Weeks are definitely pretty dangerous. Their Throw Flesh is just going to be sending out random damage. So we want to make sure that we are controlling these mobs as best we can, especially once they get bolstered. Look to get a max combo point kidney shot on one of them. So that's 6 seconds where no one is taking damage from one of those Harvesters. This is like one of our first like important funnel opportunities in the dungeon, and I want to see how we play this out. So looks like we are just doing our AoE rotation, and we're not okay. So we press Flag. That's great. We get that on the Necromancer. That's really the only mob that needs to die here, right? We have the Sorcerer and Bone Carver. So doing a bit of AoE isn't a terrible idea, but we're definitely pressing Black Powder a lot more than we should be. Like, that was a case where we can get a lot of value by funneling the Necromancer. So let's see what we do here. We have 15 seconds of Kyrian Orbs left. Okay, that was a good cloak. We had the, I think it's Grim Fate on us, and we cloaked to avoid the damage. That's awesome. Looks like... Oh, what did we die to there? Oh, we had another... Oh, So Narzuda got bolstered, and then we had another Grim Fate on us. So that's unlucky. I guess given that it's bolstering, maybe it's worth actually holding your cloak for a Grim Fate that gets casted later on in the pull. We kind of expect, especially since we're pulling the Marauder Patrol into that pack, that Narzuda is going to get bolstered. So looking for a cloak opportunity when Narzuda has all of those high bolstering stacks is really worthwhile. So let's see. So we kind of did the same thing that happened before. Let's see here. Oh, never mind. Okay, this is fine. So we're in Shadow Dance with Symbols of Death, and we're hitting one of these Marauders. That's fine. On a higher key, you might want to delay your damage a little bit so that you can make sure you burst through that shield. Doing damage to the Marauder without the shield up is like not super important, honestly. Making sure you burst through the shield so that it ends up killing the Marauder sooner is definitely more value. Here you did a fine job, but on a higher key, you might want to consider holding damage for a few extra seconds. This is excellent. We are targeting the Necromancer. We are spamming Eviscerates into this mob. This is really high value damage right here. This is like another situation where the Necromancer is the only mob that needs to die, and you pressing Eviscerate there is lower overall than you could be doing, but it is much higher value than if you're just trying to it's much higher value than pressing Black Powder. The one change we could have made there is making sure we had Slice and Dice up. We didn't have Slice and Dice up that whole time, if I remember correctly. So just make sure that we are keeping Slice and Dice up as much as possible. So we unfortunately get feared here. And it's okay. The Kyrian weapons are owning, and so is our Frost Mage, so it is all good. Okay, so we kind of just made the same mistake again. We just pressed, here, let's go back a little bit. So right here we have Shadow Dance off cooldown, but we're not really at risk of capping charges, and we're a few seconds away from getting our Symbols of Death back. So I think one of the biggest improvements that we can make here is just making sure that we are always holding our Shadow Dance for Symbols of Death. We want to make sure that we're always lining up one Shadow Dance with Symbols of Death. In this case, it didn't end up being that big of a deal because we had a lot of downtime, but if we were to, say, pull that Necromancer pack, then I can basically guarantee that you would be tempted to press Symbols of Death even though you didn't have a Shadow Dance charge. So, and here I just noticed one more mistake. We ended up putting Flag on the Relic. And what's going to happen, so when a mob dies with Flag on it, you will immediately get 10 stacks of Flag added to you. And these relics die super fast. So definitely avoid putting Flag on the Relic. What I would do here is, attacking the Relic early is totally fine. I would, in this case, I would Shuriken Storm and do maybe 1 or 2 Eviscerates into the Relic, and then make sure that I am getting a high duration Slice and Dice going. And then I would be putting Flag on the boss and then Rupture. So you can see here that we got up to 15 stacks, the Relic died, and now we're at 25 stacks. So we definitely could have gotten higher stacks if we were to put the Flag on the boss and then keep the boss alive, right, while we're building up stacks. Oh, nice. Your Slice and Dice fell off and you immediately did a 5 combo point Slice and Dice. This is great too. You put flag on the boss and then rupture, so to refresh your rupture duration. And now you are, oh nice. So this is a good shuriken tornado, and we're doing some AoE. This is fine. The AoE needs to happen. Someone needs to do AoE. That was also a good kick on that that mage. They were doing the frostbolt volley. So in this case, your team likely has enough AoE to kill the ads without you also doing AoE. So I would consider doing some funnel here instead of AoEing the ads. You could be pressing Eviscerate and putting up some more boss damage. So let's see what we do here. We have 5 combo points. We have no slice and dice. We have flag. We have symbols, but we have no dance charges. So we're definitely getting out of this rhythm of doing one dance with 1 symbols and then making sure that we are always having a shadow dance with our symbols. And then in this pull, it's a fortified week, and these Kyrian Stitchworks are really, really high priority targets. We can't see it here because we only have percent HP, but this Stitchwork has probably close to double the HP of everything else in the pack. So, and it's also going to be the thing that is trying to kill your tank. So what I would be doing here is making sure that we're putting flag on this mob, always targeting it, and then funneling into this mob. Another reasonable choice is to funnel into the harvester, the harvester, or rather the corpse collector. The collectors here are also dangerous. They're going to be threatening your whole team. So making sure that we're killing either the thing that's going to kill our tank or kill the thing that's going to kill the rest of the team is the priority here. Okay. This was pretty good. So we put the flag on the collector and we did the AoE rotation. We pressed symbols. We unfortunately didn't have a shadow dance, and now we have a shadow dance coming off cooldown, but that's okay. We get a 29 stack flag, a 30 stack flag. That's great. Overall, this pull was pretty good. I think the one improvement could have been made before you even started the pull, and making sure that we have a symbols. Rather, we have a shadow dance with our symbols of death. Oh, that's unfortunate. That was sick. So, unfortunately, our tank dies to the Kyrian Stitchwork. Again, that's a super dangerous mob, and once it was bolstered, it was going to be punishing the tank really badly. We also had this Fleshcrafter who was targeting one of our teammates. Looks like it was maybe our hunter. Yep, it was the hunter. And then we get in here and we press evasion and tank that. You almost certainly saved your hunter's life there. So that was sick. Very, very good instincts. One thing you might want to consider doing here is distracting this patrol. Looks like we don't pull it, so that's good. Nice. So that was quite good. And now we're funneling into this this dismantler, and that's quite good. I'd like to see you put up a slice and dice. I think our slice and dice uptime is also relatively low. That was a good kidney shot on the creation's circle attack. Okay, good. We put up the slice and dice. Yeah, so like the biggest thing that I'm seeing And I know I keep harping on this. Oh, that's unfortunate. Your poor your poor priest. One of the biggest things that I'm seeing, and I know I keep harping on it, but it is very important, is the desyncing of our symbols and Shadow Dance. So with Sub Rogue, you do almost all of your damage in these Symbols of Death and Shadow Dance combos. So it's really important to be, first of all, pressing them as often as possible and always having them be synced up. So let's see here. We have another Stitchwork, we have another Corpse Collector. You can completely own all of the stops on the Corpse Collector. So we're funneling the Relic. I think that's reasonable. What did we put our flag on though? Okay, so we put our flag on the Relic again. So we want to avoid doing that. The Relic is going to die pretty passively. Basically, you want to put 1 or 2 Eviscerates into the Relic that your team wants, and then go back to just doing what you would be doing if there weren't any relics. I think this is a pretty chill pack. So I mean, overall, okay, nice. We used flag on this. That's great. We want to be keeping that flag on cooldown as much as possible. Yeah, the biggest thing that I'm noticing is just desyncing our symbols and Shadow Dance. I think the biggest improvement you can make is just always making sure that every time you press symbols, you are also pressing Shadow Dance. And the only time you're pressing Shadow Dance without symbols is if you're going to cap on charges. This is, I think, the biggest improvement you can make to your DPS. Let's also talk about mob control. So I've seen you do some good mob control in this dungeon. Some good stuns to stop dangerous abilities and some good kicks as well. One thing that I think we can improve upon here is making sure that we have a focus target and we have a focus kick macro at the very least, if not also focus stuns. One of the biggest reasons to bring a rogue to your team is all of the control that they bring. Basically, you can completely own stops on one mob, and then that frees up your team to do stops on the other mobs in the pack. Ooh, that was that was unlucky. So definitely consider adding a focus macro that's going to give you a focus target, and then at the very least have a focus kick. Because oftentimes it will be the case that you're going to own stops on a mob that isn't your priority target. So definitely be aware of that. So let's see here. We did a bunch of Viscerates, and then we're back to Black Powder. So I would, in this case, I would basically only be pressing Eviscerate. Again, it's going to be lower overall than pressing Black Powder, but you really want this mob to die before everything else, for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, you really don't want it to be bolstered, right? If these other mobs are dying and then this mob gets bolstered, then your tank is going to be in even worse shape than they already are. They're up to 4 stacks. And it looks like this mob is going to die right before that Mutilate goes off. That's pretty scary. So one of the mistakes we made here is not putting flag on Rotspew before getting into the Shuriken Tornado. We know that we're going to be building and spending a ton of combo points in that tornado, and it basically guarantees that we would get max flag stacks. We also didn't have Cloak for some reason on this guy. So we have 2 Spew Diseases that hit us, and this mob is bolstered, so it almost one-shots us. One thing you can use Cloak for here is if you get targeted by the Spew Disease, then you can use Cloak to not only completely avoid the damage, but it avoids dropping the puddle as well. So this helps your tank keep the mobs grouped up, and is going to help your mage in particular, because your mage is doing all of this, ground targeted AoE. So if you can make sure you have Cloak for that, like you must have pressed Cloak on Gorgrind, and there's not really anything that Cloak can help with on that mob. So definitely plan to save Cloak for Rot Spew. So curious to see what we do here. We get flag on the boss. We have to get out of melee, unfortunately. This is crazy. We've got a lot going on here. So we're in Symbols of Death, but we didn't press Shadow Dance until a little bit later. Now we have to get the hook into the platform. Okay, good job. You aimed the hook. And we press Symbols and Shadow Dance again. This is great. And now we're just hitting the boss. That looked like a decent Symbols Shadow Dance window. I want to see what the rotation looked like here. So we pressed Symbols right away. And we're going to press Shadow Dance here as well. We got 1 backstab after Symbols, and that's okay. So we're at 3 combo points. Usually you want to try to start your Shadow Dance at 3 or fewer combo points, because really our goal is to build as many combo points in Shadow Dance as possible. Shadow Strike, Eviscerate, because we're at 5. Shadow Strike, Eviscerate. Double Shadow Strike. We have a 3rd Shadow Strike, so we overcapped on combo points there. And then we got the one additional Eviscerate. We do a good job of aiming the hook. We're just getting backstabs here, but we have 3 targets, so outside of Shadow Dance at 2 or more targets, you should always be pressing Shuriken Tornado. It's going to do it's actually going to do more single target damage, because you're going to be building more combo points, and then you can spend them on more finishers on your priority target. So, like in this case, we're backstabbing, but we really should be, what I would be doing here is using Shuriken Storm to get to max combo points, refreshing my Slice and Dice, and then just preparing for the boss. Like the damage on the adds here on a hierarchy is like pretty important, because you want to make sure that you're not having too many adds up at once, and oftentimes you'll want to spear through one of the adds and kill it. But okay, let's see, what do we do on this boss? We have, okay, so we threw a hammer. We Shuriken Storm. This is good. We Shadow Dance and then Black Powder. We put flag on the boss. What we should have done is, if we're going to flag the boss, we should flag and then Black Powder. And ideally, you're actually not pressing Black Powder here. You're pressing Eviscerate. That's okay. We press Shuriken Tornado, and then we should be getting into Symbols. And we're pressing more Black Powders, but we have only 2 targets. So Black Powder is more damage at 3 targets. But again, we really should be pressing Eviscerates here. We get into another Shadow Dance, but again, we are about to get our Symbols of Death back. And now we are in Symbols of Death, and we lose 4 seconds of Symbols of Death, where we don't have a Shadow Dance up. So we want to make sure that we're pooling those Shadow Dance charges. I know I keep saying that, but that is crucially important. Okay. It's a decent vanish to get out of the bindings. It was maybe a little risky. But one other thing you can do on this boss is if you get targeted by the bindings, press your cloak, because then the binding doesn't go out, the circle doesn't appear, and you're good to go. For this player, the #1 takeaway is sync up our Symbols of Death and Shadow Dance as much as possible. Those damage windows are where the majority of our damage is going to happen, and so making sure that we are setting them up to do as much damage as possible is the name of the game there. Try to get your flag on cooldown as often as possible. You pretty much never want to sit on flag. The only time you want to not cast flag is if a pull is going to die in the next few seconds and you're not going to be able to get max stacks, or if you know that there's like a really important fight coming up and you're not going to have it on cooldown. You're not going to have it ready by the time the fight starts. Maybe work on Slice and Dice uptime a little bit. There were a bunch of cases where we dropped Slice and Dice, and we want to be keeping that up, not just for priority damage, but also for additional resources from Shadow Techniques procs. And for mob control, we did a pretty good job, but we could benefit from adding a focus target macro and making sure that we are doing focus kicks so that we can do priority damage into a target that may not be our kick priority. But overall, I mean, this player is doing a pretty good job. I think there's definitely some low-hanging fruit to improve the gameplay, but given the item level of their weapons and the fact that they're brand new to Sub Rogue, I think they did a pretty good job, and this is a solid foundation to keep building off of. So thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments if you have any ideas for how I can improve my content or thoughts on things that you would like to see, and good luck out there.